This segment of the Chopin podcast is brought to you by the Chopin Foundation of the United States, presenters of the National Chopin Competition in Miami, Florida, January 2025.
I thought I would start the Berceuse by quoting our friend Wagner, who said, belittlingly, that Chopin was the composer for the right hand. This might be the one piece where it's accurate, but there's a whole point to it. It's deliberately so, and it's ingeniously so for the right hand, because what's going on the left hand? Garrick, just give us a sort of overall synopsis.
Basically, synopsis is the left hand has basically one element. It's a 6/8 bar, the first three notes of which are in D flat, and the second three notes are the 5/7 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, he doesn't do it as chords. And then in Chopin nocturne style, a tune comes in on the third. He also likes D flat a lot, by the way.
Well, and he liked starting his D flat lyrical pieces on the third note.
But the 5/7 has this kind of up in the air quality, right? Bom, bom, bom. It's like one of Leon Fleischer's balloons that floats up in the air. Because the moment you play it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom, you've lost the game already.
Yeah.
But the moment you do the opposite, which is equally bad, and you go out for a little fantasy break, doesn't work.
Well, let's remind ourselves, we're rocking a cradle. We're trying to get the child to fall asleep, and either way, if it's too rigid and regular, they're going to wake up. And if it's too let me linger on the up too long, they're going to wake up. So it's something.
Brilliant solution, yeah, exactly. So you play it more in tempo than not, but not rigidly. Yes, that's one of the most difficult things about all of Chopin, of course.
And the pedaling is very hard between the 1 and the 5.
Difficult. The one time I played for the legendary and great Vladimir Horowitz, I played this piece, and he rather liked what I was doing, he said, but he felt I was too punctilious about changing the pedal as written on the second half of the beat. Because he explained it brilliantly in a minute. He said, if you lose all this resonance there, it sounds naked. You've made a hole. And he said, but you can't, obviously. He wasn't suggesting that. He said, try experimenting with blurring a little bit or even half pedaling and just see if you can. That was pretty good. The more you try, the worse it's going to get. But somehow there's a way. And he pointed out, as any good teacher would, that you have to be very careful because each piano is different with its dampers and each room you play in is different. And he said you have to do it by ear, but you don't want sonorous holes. Because it sounds like then you've got blocks of sounds. He wanted, which I think Chopin wanted, look at those phrases that last 25 bars.
It takes away from the dreamy quality if you just break the pedal, lift the pedal and clear it so often.
If you do some kind of gross blurring, that's not so cool either. This becomes easier in a very big hall with a very good piano.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more leeway for blurring without it being blurring. Bigger rooms are kinder to
Yes. And speaking of dreaming, I can't help but hear this as the mother gently rocking the child to sleep. But then as Chopin called them variations, he wrote the word variations on his manuscripts when he was sketching these out. When the variations begin, for me, they are the child falling asleep and beginning to dream. And these dreams become increasingly wild and incredibly fantastic. Maybe you could hop through the so-called variation.
Luckily, Chopin has made it very orderly because he does his variations in 4-bar units. I think that's without exception. You'll find that. So you have a theme, which is 4 bars long. Then it starts again with the same theme, but the second voice enters underneath 4 bars later. So and now here we are 4 bars later with the same voices and same texture, but at the tail end of it, the last 2 bars, he's going to break the 2 voices apart. Now we have another variation, which is all about pedal points. This becomes a little dream state thing.
It's like he's dreaming of the dogs barking in the Minute Waltz or something.
Exactly. And then we have a virtuosic 4 bars. And boy, have I not played this piece for a long time, so please forgive me. Then you get devilishly difficult double notes in this version. Then you have another very.
So that's basically the thirds etude, except
Yes.
I can play the Berceuse because that's the maximum tempo I can do that at.
And then, and then you have it jumping all over the place. But by this point, you know the theme so well you can hear it, even though it's emphasized in different parts of the beat. Not so easy. Now we have more thirds coming down. A nasty little segment. They're gorgeous.
More pedal tone.
Now we have 3 voices singing chords. Pedal tones, and then not. Now faster yet.
I just love what just happened because it's like Chopin saying, here's the most diatonic, boring 2 chords you've ever heard in my left hand. But did you know at the same time I can play all the notes on the piano and make it sound good? I mean,
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All of them. Just to show you that I know how boring it can get, watch.
yeah, we got the what do we call that? The flat 9.
Yeah, the flat
And,
9. Yes, it's almost as if you said, I've shown you everything I could do, but now I'm going to just put a little more spice into it.
He's just playing around on the keyboard. They're little etudes. They're
They're all little etudes, yeah. I don't know if I can play the last one. Let me see if I can do it slowly.
Well, let me tell you about that one because I like to do something when I get there, because on the one hand, the moving line is interesting. B flat, A flat, F, D, da, 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 da. But you know what's more interesting? I think the top. Dee, 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 da, 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 da. Yeah,
Yeah. Now there's more genius coming of a musical kind, not so
well,
much
finally
etudes.
things calm down, and for the next Sostenuto section, Garrick, I wanted to actually ask you about something that we haven't talked about enough, but I think is a really important subject in Chopin, and that's rubato. And I have an important quote from some of Liszt's contemporaries, and one of them actually relates to the Berceuse. So we have Kleczynski, an account which said that some of Chopin's students have assured me that in the rubato, the left hand ought to keep perfect time, whilst the right indulges in fancy. And that is such a case, Chopin would say, quote, "The left hand is the conductor of the orchestra. Many passages of the Berceuse," Kleczynski says, "can be executed in this manner. And then he says, nevertheless, he says there's actually moments where you can't do rubato like that. You need everything to sort of move." And of course, there's a famous quote of Liszt. "Look at these trees," Liszt said. "The wind plays in the leaves, stirs up life among them. The tree remains the same." That is Chopinesque rubato. So the passage you're about to play is an example, I think, of one, well, really the whole piece, but especially here, where you can actually try to experiment with this famous, but also famously challenging concept of the unwavering tree trunk of a left hand and the leaves in the right hand. What do you make of all this as a Chopinist your whole life? And
Well,
then maybe you can demonstrate some experiments with this passage coming up.
that's a huge subject you've just brought up. It's interesting that Mozart also said the same thing about rubato, how the left hand plays in time and the right hand sings freely. Now, that means you have to be two different brains at once, and very difficult to do. However, it's very much done with singers, with orchestras. Marvelous example, which is iconic, would be Judy Garland singing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." She sings in front of and after the beats.
Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue.
She never gets off the larger pulse of the music. You know, she doesn't sing "Somewhere over the rainbow," which is the way it's written. She sings it freely. And can the orchestra ever have a little flexibility too? That's another nasty question, especially in the nocturnes. I mean, is it really? I'm not sure. I don't know.
That's a little drunk, but yeah,
That's very drunk.
point taken.
But yeah, well, that's the thing. Rubato can sound too drunk. But here, at this point in the Berceuse, now he gets back to that nocturne. Beautiful arches. It's more songful.
Your hand is so big, you didn't do the 4 over the 5.
But when I play it in real life, I do.
Oh, okay.
I made the mistake of looking at the music, and then I realized what I was doing too
Well,
late.
no, I was going to say your hand can reach that comfortably.
That's cheating. I think that his is better. His fingering is much better.
Garrick, can I ask you to just entertain me for a second? Could you play those 4 bars again? First, I want you to try to play, no, hold on, as strictly as you can, both hands. It's still expressively, but in time. And then we're going to try to do 2 different kinds of rubato.
Yeah, okay.
Good. So that's everything is straight, still very pretty. It's more like the beginning. I think the first lullaby needs to kind of be sung straight. But here we have the chance to do this kind of Chopinesque rubato that we were just hearing from one of his students or contemporaries. Could you try it again? Try to keep the left hand as unwavering as you can, just like you did. see what kinds of maneuver you can do in the right, just whatever comes out. I don't know if it'll be early or late, or but I do want to ask you to err on the side of a little too much in the right hand, but without the left hand change.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try.
Good. As I said, you have to be two people to do this. I don't know what that sounds like.
Oh, that was well. See, you did go a little bit off the deep end, but now we can split the difference. Could you find a tasteful in between?
Tasteful, yes. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing this all as guesswork.
No, you know what I love is you did one thing, because we often hear, especially when we're first getting into Chopin, we say, oh, there's an expressive thing I just learned about today. I heard a pianist play the left hand before the right. But then when you go an extra layer of galaxy brain, you realize sometimes the right can come before the left.
That's right.
And that's what you just did, actually.
Did I? Okay. Good.
Yeah, right at the end, your A flat lands before the D. And like you said, Julie Garland does on both sides of the fence.
Absolutely.
She lands sometimes early, sometimes late.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me.
Exactly. And we also know that this is also a debatable subject, but that when we actually voice things, sometimes it's actually the speed of attack. It's very hard to control three textures in one hand. So if I bring out the E like that, I'm actually playing it a little before or a little after. I'm not going. So, I mean, that's one of the secrets of pianists. That's one of our dirty secrets that we never talk about. Sometimes we don't even know that we're doing it.
We could have a whole episode on rubato, but I'm going to move forward. He starts flying into the air again, and I want to just draw your attention to some accents a few bars later.
Oh, I know, yes.
How about those A flats, which end up being a kind of motive throughout the piece?
In pedal points.
I love that last one. He's like, by the way, it's still there.
Yeah, that's the improviser, right?
Yep. I think I hear it as almost coming to a stop there. It's a
yes. I mean, here. This is the end of the piece, actually.
Well, yeah, but that final A flat accent, I used to wonder what to do with it. Besides bring it out, I actually think it's fun to almost stop a moment.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and that was beautiful. I love that. And this brings me to a quote. This is in Alan Walker's biography. He says, Tovey liked to draw attention to the aesthetic problem peculiar to variation form, namely how to stop the momentum that arises when one variation follows another with the predictability of a planet in orbit. With each revolution, there is the inevitable expectation that another is to follow it. In brief, having started the process, how do you stop it? How do you bring the work to a satisfactory close? There were two traditional solutions, both of them employed by Beethoven and well known to Chopin. One was to write an extended coda. The other was to attach a fugue to the final variation. Such methods served to provide a cushion against what would otherwise be a crude and abrupt finish to the composition, and with it the feeling that the piece had simply stopped for want of ideas. Chopin's solution has become yet another locus classicus worthy of inclusion in textbooks on variation form in the Berceuse. In a stroke of pure magic, he unexpectedly introduces a C flat in bar 55, presaging a change of key. The single note which arrives unbidden is sustained for 4 measures and is at first reluctant to resolve, but ultimately it sinks into the subdued key of G flat, producing a prolonged dying fall. Whether or not this moment was intended to suggest a child gradually falling to sleep, that is the image most readily conveyed as the music comes to a rest in a land of dreams and a final unadorned statement of the opening theme in the tonic key. What do you think of all that, Garrick?
That's brilliant, and that's exactly what happens. He breaks the... It's as regular as the planets in their orbit now, and suddenly, for the first time on the fourth, eighth note of the bar, we don't have that anymore. Woo! And he stays there 4 bars. It's getting very sleepy. There it is again. And you have the opening theme with no 5/7s in it. It certainly suggests a very benign falling asleep. And he closes very formally. Ooh, that was good.
Nice, so beautiful.
Yeah, actually, and I think we've discussed this before in the D-flat nocturne. This is another one of Chopin's earworms. In D-flat, he loves this.
Absolutely.
The third time, and he stays there forever. And he does it in the D-flat etude, opus 25, number 8, in the D-flat section of the first posthumous etude. He just loves this. And of course, one of his great children, one of his great musical children, he didn't have any children of any kind that we know about, and he didn't certainly found a school, but where would Debussy and Ravel be without him, right? So, the most famous moment in the most famous post-Chopin romantic piece, the famous Clair de Lune, where does he do toward the end the same magic? That's a direct tip of the hat. I would like to add one comment about a composer friend of mine, no longer alive, sadly, Louis Weingarten, a marvelous composer who I knew very, very well and played a number of works on at Juilliard. And later, he was obsessed with this piece, as most composers are, and he said, he was doing the competitive thing. He said, in every 4-bar variation, Chopin gives you a figure that Ravel could turn into a whole piece. I mean, for example, he thought that Ravel Ondine was a work of great genius. He said, but it's basically one idea. He said, that could have been one of Chopin's ideas. Yeah, in a way, it's true. Chopin was so profligate in his invention. That's another, perhaps Bachian or even better, a Mozartian quality. It's like, well, okay. It's like what Martin Gould told me about the biggest A-flat waltz. He said, Chopin is a poker player there. He said, oh, look, I've got got a better card up my sleeve. And then 2 minutes later, oh, you liked that one when I showed it to you last time. Here, much better. Just up the ante.
Every one of his pieces is a royal flush. Even the miniatures, even the Berceuse.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
One last little anecdote about the Berceuse. We know that Pauline Viardot had an infant daughter that Chopin met in the mid-1840s. And it's possible this Berceuse was written with her in mind, maybe other infants, who knows. But one thing I read in that Walker biography is that Chopin adored this child and would sometimes, just gently kiss the hands of the child. Can you imagine being a human being whose hands were kissed by Chopin when you were a baby? Anyway,